afternoon, everyone. We're going to call this meeting order. First of all, I want to thank everybody for agreeing to meet on such a short notice. We're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance by me. And then we'll have roll call.
Can we do the invocation?
Y'all don't have it on there?
Yes, I'm.
Oh, that's on one line. All right, we're gonna have invocation first since we standing. We'll bow our head. Pastor Donna Hunter, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir. Oh, gracious and eternal God, we thank you now for this day. We especially thank you for your grace and your mercy that have allowed us to be able to come again. We pray your blessings upon this organization, its staff, and indeed the purpose of which it has been created, and the purpose that we seek to serve. I ask now that you bless our going forth, and may you guide us, may you grant us your wisdom and your understanding, that whatever we do here today would be according to your own will. And so, Master, we come to ask of these blessings in the name of the risen King, Jesus of Nazareth, Son of a living God. And we all say it, amen.
Amen. Amen. All right. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have roll call, man.
Chief Carl Dunn,
Here.
Sergeant Connie Kirsch,
Here.
Dr. Derek Cole, Mrs. Ingrid Payne, Rep. C. Denise Marcel, Ms. Mary Washington, Attorney Stephen Schilling, Ms. Pamela Mitchell, Councilwoman Carolyn Coleman,
Present.
Reverend Dr. Mary Moss,
Present.
Reverend Donald Hunter Sr.,
Present.
Attorney Jacqueline Nash Grant,
Present.
Ms. Geraldine Key, Mrs. Jerry Booker,
Here.
Attorney Jennifer Mozant.
Present.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you, ma'am. We, first we gonna, make one quick, amendment to the agenda, and that amendment gonna be to adopt the minutes from the April the 18th Finance Committee meeting and adopt the minutes from the April the 18th, 2023 Board of Directors meeting. Can I get a motion, please?
I move to adopt those sets of minutes.
All right,
Second.
all right. All in favor? We got any nays? Thank you. All right, public comments? Any public comments?
Just want to acknowledge Friday's activity for the seniors. Kudos to the staff. If you were there, I'm sure you all enjoyed it, but it's just good for the seniors. They start getting ready, I believe, at 2 o'clock. And it was well attended.
Yes.
And really, yes, so just kudos to the staff.
Yes.
I did tell that. My Facebook was flooded with evening gowns and tennis shoes. And they had a smile on their face, so.
Yes.
A job well done. I just
Yes.
wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I want to say that it was especially refreshing to see them on Channel 9. And the good play that Channel 9 gave us, WAFB. And it was so funny, they interviewed the most impressive young man. I don't know his name, Miss Clark Amar, but he was dressed to the nines. He was one of the senior centers.
Okay.
King.
Okay.
Kings.
Uh-huh.
And he said he brought his girlfriend who had never been to a prom.
All
And
right,
so that
all
was so
right.
important to
Yes,
him. So
yes.
Thank you.
I think that that's a good thing, that y'all plan activities that give them purpose.
Yes, ma'am.
That remind me, Tosh, I missed my prom. So guess what? That was my first prom.
Oh,
That's
wow.
all right, man. Y'all bust my chair on the prom. Huh? That's all right, man. y'all do me like that? All right, any more public comment?
That's
All right, so, number 6 is gonna be action items, and we just, the main thing is, we want just some clarification on this check signing policy, which has been brought to light, and, how it came about, and, how we are here today to get everything right, and we always, as this board, and everybody that I look around here, and I know for certain without a doubt, the seniors are the number one in our hearts and our mind. And we know the seniors are number one for Tasha for sure. Because Tasha dreams about things that I could never dream about doing with the seniors. I just want to take them fishing and fry fish for them. But we appreciate, and I appreciate the heart that everybody here. Everybody here are volunteers, and we just come out and try to make sure that we put on our best foot forward for our seniors every day. But as far as the check writing policy comes, it just, to me, being in the meetings and already being on the board and the way it came out, it appears that one person was demanding to me, it just didn't ring to what was done in this room when it came to that policy and when the motion was made and everything else. And so, if anybody got any input from the finance committee on that, I wasn't a part of it now, I'm a part of it now. I am, being the chairman, but it's just that it didn't come from the finance committee the way it was portrayed on the news. So is there anybody, I know you are Ingrid, the treasurer now, were you on the finance committee then? You were? Okay. Ms. Karen? Counselor?
Okay, sure. On the day that the finance committee met, and if you look at your notes, you can see who was at that meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
And what I do know, the truth that I do know was that the chairperson, who was Jamie Robertson, brought the, I'm recording, so Knock, you got me too, huh? Yes, okay. And so what I know about truth is that Jamie Robertson brought the recommendation to us about having one person to sign. Now, that one person, you all, did not mean just Ms. Omar being able to sign. What that meant was because no names were taken off of the account. And so after, it was a recommendation by him, and he was the secretary at that time. Conversation took place when the recommendation was made. The conversation was asked about the why and the whatever and all of this. The bank's no longer required to. It was also spoken that it was cumbersome to get these checks signed, and I don't know about you all, but I don't know nobody that want to wait on their money. And so it was cumbersome because Secretary out of pocket, Chair Lady Denise Marcel was out of pocket because she may be in session. And so that was the conversation there. Another part of the conversation that was left out was a question was asked about us being able to know about the checks that were signed. And so it was stated in that meeting, and I believe, brother, you asked that question, but I don't know. But it was stated in the meeting that everybody was privy to be able to get that information, and that information would be given in order that you can actually see what checks are being signed. It was also stated that we weren't talking about 5 or 10 checks, but we were talking about a lot of checks that had to be signed. When we left here, and if you even look at the minutes here, then you will see that the secretary was in agreement with this. And so even the The treasurer, correct me, the treasurer, 'cause I don't like nothing but truth. The treasurer. And so even the chairperson was good with this at that time. And so, and this was what that committee brought to the board as a whole. And the board as a whole voted on this particular item, which was that there would be one person, and the one person would not necessarily be the CEO that would sign off on these checks. Now, that's what I know, Chairman.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for that. All right, anybody else got any other? Yes, ma'am?
I was not at the meeting, but being a former board chair,
Yes, ma'am.
the person that signed off on the checks with me, and I was chair during the pandemic.
Yes, ma'am.
And during the pandemic, we had 2 signatures, and it was always the treasurer, Jennifer, and myself as the chair.
Yes, ma'am.
And I didn't see a problem with that because I understand was mentioned they would bring it to me. During the pandemic, we could not meet. So therefore, one person, the same person that would come every time would bring the checks to me with a mask, and I would have on a mask and gloves.
Yes, ma'am.
So it was because of that that we had 2 signatures, and it was never Tasha.
Yes, ma'am.
It was always the board chair and the treasurer.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I also want to point out that in that process, we required in those motions that all checks would be reviewed by this board.
Yes, sir.
We have to uphold our fiduciary responsibility. That cannot be relegated or laid aside. Therefore, that motion was put in, and that was the discussion.
Yes, sir.
That we would make certain that the oversight piece was there. And I believe that what we set in place was sufficient enough that every board member, based on these minutes, voted for that.
Yes, sir.
But that's not what was said, actually, in the press. We do have oversight. We take our oversight very seriously. We realize that oversight actually strengthens the executive director. It strengthens the agency. It's compliance with statutory requirements. And therefore, we're here to take that very seriously. And we work together. We're not here to dictate, but we work together with the director of this agency. And so far, in my own opinion, as I said in the meeting on last week, I feel like everything has been working sufficiently well.
Yes.
If it were not, I would have at least said something to someone. And so I think that the structure of applying or allowing all checks to be reviewed by the board, I think that also there are certain limits that we indicated that would require prior to approval, but the monthly expenditures and things of that nature, that needs to go on, and it needs to go on timely.
Yes, sir.
And that's what we were seeking, to maintain physical austerity of this particular agency.
Yes, sir.
Now, I don't see how that gets to be wrapped into what it was actually portrayed to be. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have a few questions. What was the policy regarding auditing? Did y'all have a discussion about auditing the checks, or maybe, I see in the minutes that Ms. Pratt stated to the board members that there was a system how the checks are generated, and a check registry is generated on a weekly basis. Was that put into the policy that that would be done?
Yes, it was. That was the thing. Every week we process checks on a weekly basis. We do put some in the middle, but that check is printed. We do a weekly check register. Part of that policy was that register would be sent to the treasurer so that they could sign off on it. And anybody else who wanted a copy of that check register would get it every week. And that was since April 18th, since that day. So, yeah. And if anybody wants to see a copy of a check from that register, and then I did a finance committee meeting, I told them, just let me know and we can pull the packets, and they're welcome to come and review any vouchers that we have.
And how often are you audited by outside auditors?
We're audited annually by an independent auditor.
Okay. And why was it cumbersome to,
Well, the reason it came up, and I guess the reason it came up, because every week when we process checks, and we have vendors that we pay monthly, but we have them set up on a weekly scale, every week we pay so many vendors. And when we have events.
tell us that number, how many is?
Just rent vouchers that we get, they're due the first of the month, the first Friday after that we process that. We may have at least 20 to 30 checks a week, at least. Now, there may be, sometimes we have a lot more than that, depending on what, if it falls in the middle of the month, depends on when our vendors bill us. You know, some are set up to be paid first weekend, some the second and third. But at least 20 per week, but a lot of times much more than that. And the reason I asked for this change is because we were having problems getting a second signature. You know, we couldn't get them, and we couldn't pay our bills, we couldn't pay them on time. We'd have to hold them until I can catch up with the second signature. Okay, and it was creating a problem in the finance department on paying our bills in a timely manner, which is why I suggested that.
I was not in the meeting, but it is my understanding this is for recurring bills,
Right.
water, rent, electricity,
correct.
those types of things.
Right.
So if we have a big event like we did on Friday,
Right.
then those type of checks where there's an out of the ordinary expense
Mhm.
would then be reviewed or be signed by two people.
Right, right.
Okay.
If I can catch up with you, I'll see you. But yes.
You know, I'm back on the board now. You know, I try to make myself available for you.
No, but you're absolutely right, because we have been, since the first of the, we had quite a few events, and we were not able to get two signatures for all of the checks and stuff that we had. It was just an issue with everybody being available, okay? So, yes.
And if I could just interject, I wasn't gonna say anything today, so I'm gonna keep my comments limited, but if I could interject, what folks don't realize is we don't operate like the normal entity. We have 23 locations. There's 23 rents or mortgages, there's 23 light bills, 23 garbage collections, 23 COX, 23 Wi-Fi. It's 23 senior centers on top of food vendor, milk vendor that come every week, right? And so it creates an exorbitant amount for the finance department to create the vendors. We print we are still some of the last folks in the city that print checks, have a check registry, we have the documentation, so then when you come in, you see what it's for. And then because we are grant funded on top of the millage, it's all charged to different fund balances. So it's a stack for this, it's a stack for that. And so sometimes we don't operate like a regular nonprofit because we are quasi-governmental. There's a lot of layers that we have to have for our oversight agency, Governor's Office of Elderly Affairs. And so that produces a massive amount of information as it relates to our funding. And so when you say reoccurring, it is totally for the 23 locations, plus the transportation. We got 16 buses, gas, fuel, man, it's a lot.
So I was perplexed about your system and that you manually sign checks.
Right,
You hand write
we do.
your signature, and why can't you have a electronic signature?
Well, we tried that before. We saw information on that. We checked with the governor's office, and we're not allowed to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right,
So we have to manually sign.
yeah. And we can't EFT everything, because that would be so much easier. Set it all up on EFT, that's what everybody else does. You set it up on EFT, it direct drafts. You can only do that if that's the only thing they offer. But if there's something where you can create the documentation and the trail, then you have to do it that way.
Y'all buy postage and mail in envelopes?
Well, our vendors know that they don't want to wait in the mail, they come.
Okay.
They come and get it. But we do mail quite a bit. We mail the checks.
And a lot of vendors that we deal with, they're small businesses. And a lot of them don't want the EFT, you know, they're still scared about the information and stuff. So I'm old and my practice is old fashioned. I like checks, okay? And a lot of our vendors, like I said, they're small businesses, they don't want you to go online and pay them EFT because they don't have the, on the other end, they're getting their money without having to pay fees and stuff. So that, we do a lot of checks that a lot of companies don't do. We do still process manual check, you know.
We track collectively in a month, just so that I have a better understanding, about how many checks for the 23 centers are cut each month, if you know.
It's well, it's
About
well over-
400?
Huh?
Look
Not
like about 400.
not that many. Not 400, but I would say anywhere between 100, 150. Yeah. The bulk of it coming mid-month, when most of our statements come in, yeah. And if we have an event, of course, that would change, because it depends on how many vendors we use for those events, and having to pay them as well.
Chief, may I also say this?
Yes,
and I'll
sir.
be through?
Yes, sir.
One other thing, which is a significant part of all of this, especially from a fiscal standpoint, is that we sat with the independent auditor, who went over the entire budget with us. And I can't quite remember, but to the best of my knowledge, there were no findings in that audit. We did have some questions here and there, but we examined the expenditure of every one of these categories that they're actually expending funds at. That auditor's responsibility, and I asked a question to him, can we actually use this as a validation that all that has been done fiscally on the part of this agency has been according to order? He said yes. And that's the only proof that we can give to an external audience, is what our independent auditor has already validated. If you have any questions with him, then you need to talk with him as it relates to their capacity or ability to do an audit. But that's what this board used to make our decisions.
Okay, Chief, can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
So in other words, we are here because somebody misunderstood what went on at the board meeting.
Yes,
That
ma'am.
went to the press or media about it. And it had to be somebody from this board or who was in this room. So therefore, someone didn't get a good understanding, but they failed to come to the people that took care of the business.
Yes, ma'am.
So all they had to do was come back and ask a question to anybody who's on this board. So we're here because of a misunderstanding.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to clarify that a misunderstanding there, that's what we're here for. Because, like I say, it was disturbing. I was disturbed because if I wouldn't have known better, which most audience don't, because they're not in this room and on privy to everything that we see here and say in here. But if I wouldn't have known better, then I would have listened to the news. I'd have been totally misled to believe that one person demanded the right checks, and that couldn't have been further from the truth.
The word perplexed was used in here, and I want to use as a segue to that, talking about being perplexed. And I'm going to tell you what perplexed me, and that was, see, when I got in this seat, I said there was two groups that I'm in this thing for, and that's children and the senior citizens. What perplexed me was the fact that my seniors, these senior citizens, were perplexed because of this erroneous information. What perplexed me was the wasting of my time trying to tell folk out here in the community that that is not truth. Even some of the council members that came to me, and I have to respect my council people because their statement to the folk that was reaching out to them to try to find out about if this was and what was, let me get with Councilwoman Coleman because she is the person
Yes.
on that board, and before I get back with you. And this, the last reach out to me was as late as yesterday evening. And so what perplexed me also was here in the community when it was stated that a statement had been made, and I'm just gonna say, and I believe it was to you, CEO, that someone said, I'm gonna get you. And so as a result of I'm gonna get you, then this the kind of mess that's really wasting my time, our time. And so when we talk about being perplexed, that's the perplexion that I receive.
Yes, ma'am. Any more input? All right, we kind of clarified if anybody got a misunderstanding this time before we go back to the press as far as how this came about. And if anything needs to be revisited or reviewed, guess what? We're gonna carry on to do this, and we're gonna always make sure that our seniors are first and his organization is always well taken care of. And guess what? If we don't feel as though we're gonna do that, guess what? We just get us a whole new board, including me.
Yes,
But I know I'm in for it for the right reason.
I'm in agreement with
Yes,
you
sir.
on that.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's carry out our fiduciary responsibilities. Let's do them in order and maintain a sense of integrity about all of that. And I'm at peace.
There you go.
Amen. That it?
Amen. Yes.
I move to adjourn.
Wait, I have unfinished business. You know, this is my first meeting. This is my first meeting.
Chief, you know, take me fishing.
You gotta finish the agenda.
We all go, that's what I told her. I told her my next thing, she talking about adjourning already. She ready to go fish. All right, we got any, yeah, she perplexed. All right, we got any unfinished business? Everybody good? All right, any new business? Everybody good? Now, I will accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, and second? All right, all in favor? All right, any nays that want to stay? No, we good.
Can I just say one thing? I just want to thank you all for taking your time today to come and clarify this information, and just to say, you know, what the board did and what they didn't do and what I did and what I didn't do. I truly appreciate it, you know, because sometimes I don't get a voice, so it's good that you all came in and just stood in the gap for me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, I wasn't standing in the gap, just standing up, that's all.